That's your protection now, widow. Some washed-up floor sweeper who can barely lift a broom. Jake Brennan's voice cut through the Silver Bell Saloon like a blade through silk. 6 men stood behind him, spread across the entrance in a wall of leather, steel, and bad intentions. The afternoon crowd had melted away. Card players vanishing mid-hand. Drinkers abandoning half-finished whiskey. The piano player, old Charlie who'd been playing the same tunes for 15 years, closed his lid with a soft click and disappeared through the side door. Catherine Reese stood behind her polished bar, hands flat on the wood she'd cleaned every night since her husband died 3 years ago. The black dress she wore wasn't for show. It was armor, protection against a world that thought widows were easy targets. Beside her stood Marcus Webb, 71 years old, spine bent from 5 decades of ranch work, hands that shook when he poured morning coffee, that trembled when he swept the floors at dawn, that could barely grip a broom handle on cold mornings. The old hired hand everyone in Whiskey Bend dismissed as charity Catherine couldn't afford. Marcus set down the glass he'd been polishing. Slowly, carefully. His movements had the deliberate quality of a man who'd learned to think before acting. His eyes, pale blue, faded like old denim washed too many times, lifted to meet Brennan's gaze. "Mr. Brennan," Marcus said quietly, his voice rough from years of not using it much. "Mrs. Reese asked you yesterday to leave her establishment alone. Us polite. You didn't respect that." Brennan stepped closer. His boots were expensive, hand-tooled leather from Denver. The kind of boots that said money and meant power in a town where most men wore whatever held together longest. "Old man, you got about 10 seconds to shuffle back to whatever closet you sleep in. This is business. Real business between adults. Not something a broken-down ranch hand could possibly understand." The men behind Brennan laughed. Forced laughter. The kind men make when their boss expects it. But one of them, a lean gunfighter named Cole with Kansas dust still on his coat, wasn't laughing. His eyes had gone narrow, focused on something most people overlooked. Catherine's hand drifted toward the shotgun she kept under the bar. Thomas had shown her how to use it the week they'd opened. Had made her practice until loading and firing became muscle memory. "If I'm not here," he'd said, "you need to be able to protect yourself." Then his heart had given out one February morning, and she'd been alone ever since. Marcus's hand touched her wrist. Gentle, calloused fingers barely making contact. A message without words. "Not yet. Trust me. Please." Marcus said, still not looking away from Brennan. "Would you mind stepping into the kitchen? Just for a few minutes. This won't take long." "Marcus, there's 6 of them." Catherine kept her voice low. "Meant only for him. They killed Thomas. They'll kill you too. I can count." Something flickered in those faded eyes. Something cold and old and familiar with violence. "But I'm asking you to trust me. Can you do that?" Before Catherine could answer, one of Brennan's men, a kid who couldn't have been more than 22, all swagger and no sense, snorted. "Listen to Grandpa trying to sound tough. This is rich, boys. This is pure gold." Marcus turned his full attention back to Brennan. His posture changed. Nothing obvious, just a subtle shift in weight distribution, in the way his shoulders settled, in how his right hand dropped to his side. "Relaxed. Ready. I'm giving you one chance, Mr. Brennan. One chance to walk out that door and leave Mrs. Reese alone. Leave her business alone. Leave this town alone. Take it." Brennan's face flushed. Red crept up from his collar, staining his cheeks the color of raw meat. "Or what? You'll bore me to death with stories about the good old days. You'll sweep me into submission." He glanced back at his men, making sure they appreciated his wit. "Old man, I've killed tougher things than you before breakfast. Hell, you probably can't even hold a gun steady with those shaking hands." Marcus's right hand hung loose at his side. The tremor was gone. Completely gone. "Your mistake, Mr. Brennan, is thinking age makes a man weak. Sometimes it just makes him tired. Tired of watching bullies win. Tired of good people losing. Tired of being quiet when speaking up might matter." Cole, the Kansas gunfighter, had gone very still. His eyes tracked down from Marcus's face to his waist, to the gun belt most folks never noticed. Simple leather, worn smooth by decades of use. 2 holsters, And in those holsters, 2 Colt .45 peacemakers with bone grips, immaculately maintained despite their obvious age. "Boss," Cole said slowly, carefully, "look at those guns." "I don't care if it's carrying George Washington's personal sidearms," Brennan snapped. "He's just an old fool playing dress-up, playing cowboy. Probably hasn't drawn those things in 20 years. Marcus drew. His hand moved. Not fast by young standards. Not the lightning blur of a 20-year-old gunfighter showing off in a saloon. But with the precision of 10,000 repetitions. With the economy of motion that comes from doing something so many times the body remembers even when the mind forgets. The Colt cleared leather. Rose. The hammer cocked with a sound like a bone breaking. The barrel leveled at Brennan's chest. All in one fluid motion that seemed to take no time at all and all the time in the world simultaneously. The gun didn't shake. Didn't waver. Marcus's hand, the same hand that trembled while washing glasses, that could barely grip a broom on cold mornings, was rock solid, steady as carved stone. The saloon went dead silent. Even the flies stopped buzzing. "Sweet Jesus Christ," Cole breathed. His face had gone white. "The initials. Boss, look at the bone grips. MW. Those are," his voice cracked. "Boss, that's Marcus Webb." Brennan's smirk died like a candle in wind. "What?" "5th Cavalry. Apache campaigns. Scout work out of Fort Apache." Cole was backing toward the door now, hands held carefully away from his gun. They called him Silent Marcus because he never talked, never threatened, just did the work. He brought in over 100 men. Killed, he swallowed. Nobody knows how many he killed. He disappeared 20 years ago. Everyone thought he was dead. Marcus spoke softly. "The gun never moved. I'm the man whose friend you murdered 3 years ago. Thomas Reese was a good man. Built this saloon from nothing. Treated his workers fair. Paid his debts. And you killed him because he wouldn't sell his wife's livelihood. Because he stood in your way." Brennan tried to speak. Nothing came out. "Now I'm giving you the same chance I gave better men than you." Marcus's thumb rested on the hammer. "Walk away. Ride out. Never come back. Or I'll kill all 6 of you where you stand." "That's not a threat, Mr. Brennan. That's just mathematics. The kind I learned from experience." "Hold on. If this story has you hooked, give it a like. And if you're new here, subscribe and tell me what country you're listening from in the comments. Now don't move. The next part is where everything changes. The standoff stretched. Time became thick. Moved like honey. Catherine watched from behind the bar, barely breathing. She'd known Marcus for 18 months. Hired him the week after Thomas's funeral when he'd shown up looking for work. Bent spine. Shaking hands. Asking for almost nothing. She'd thought she was helping him. Charity for an old man with nowhere else to go. Now she realized everything she'd known was wrong. Brennan found his voice. Choked and tight. "You can't take all 6 of us, old man. Even if you were fast once, and I'm betting those days are long gone, you can't drop all 6 before someone gets you. That's just basic mathematics." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. His voice stayed calm. Conversational. Like they were discussing the weather or crop prices. "But I'll kill you first, Mr. Brennan. That I promise. You'll be dead before you hit the floor. Cold in the ground before sunset. Your boys might get me after. Probably will. But you won't see it. You'll just see black. So I'm asking you, what's your pride worth? What's your anger worth? Is it worth dying today?" The young kid, the one who'd been laughing, started to reach for his gun. Marcus's left hand moved. The second Colt appeared like magic. Both barrels now covering the room. Both hammers cocked. Both guns aimed with the steady certainty of a man who'd done this before and survived. "Don't," Marcus said quietly. "Please don't make me do this. I'm tired, son. So damn tired of killing. Tired of faces I see when I try to sleep. I came here for peace. For a quiet place to end my days. Don't make me become what I was. I'm begging you. Don't." The kid's hand stopped. Froze halfway to his weapon. Something in Marcus's voice, not threat, but weariness, bone-deep exhaustion, made him pause. Cole had already backed to the door, hands held high and open. "This ain't worth dying over, boss. Not today. Not for some saloon." "You coward," Brennan snarled. but sweat ran down his face, dripped from his chin. His hand twitched toward his gun, then stopped. Twitched again, stopped again. Another man backed away, then another. Within heartbeats, 4 of the 6 were moving toward the door, hands carefully away from weapons, eyes locked on the old man with 2 Colts and the will to use them. Brennan stood alone with one loyal man, a thick-necked tough from St. Louis who'd killed 3 men in bar fights and thought that made him dangerous. They looked at Marcus, looked at each other. Reality was settling in, cold and final. Brennan's face went purple, rage and fear mixing into something ugly. This isn't over, old man. You hear me? I'll burn this place to the ground. I'll kill you both. Marcus fired, not at Brennan, at the mirror behind the bar, 6 feet to Brennan's left. The glass exploded, shattered into 1,000 fragments that rained down like ice. The sound was enormous, overwhelming, a thunderclap in the enclosed space. When the echo faded, both of Marcus's Colts were pointed directly at Brennan's head. Both hammers cocked, both triggers half-pulled. Next shot goes through flesh, Marcus said. His voice was ice. Winter wind across a frozen lake. You've got 3 seconds to walk out that door. After that, mercy is off the table. After that, I stop being the man I want to be and become the man I was. 1, 2. They ran, scrambling, tripping over each other. The St. Louis tough nearly knocking Brennan down in his haste to reach the door. Brennan last, backing away, still shouting threats that nobody believed in anymore. The door slammed behind them. Hoofbeats thundered in the street. Fading. Gone. Silence fell like a curtain. Marcus lowered the gun slowly. His hands started shaking again. Not from fear, from exhaustion, from adrenaline draining away like water from a cracked bucket. He holstered both Colts with movements that were pure muscle memory, then gripped the edge of the bar to keep from falling. Catherine came around the counter. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was hammering. She stood in front of him, looking up at his weathered face, at the lines carved by 60 years of sun and wind and violence. Marcus wept, she said quietly. You've been lying to me. No. He looked at her, and there was pain in those pale eyes. Real pain. The kind that doesn't heal. Been exactly who I said. Just didn't mention what I used to be. Didn't figure it mattered. That man, Silent Marcus, the killer, has been dead for 20 years. I buried him. Walked away from that life. Thought I'd never have to dig him up again. You were a cavalry scout. Deputy marshal after that. Bounty hunter for a spell. Spent 23 years doing work that needs doing but cost the man doing it. I've killed. His voice cracked. I've killed more men than I can remember. Not all of them deserved it. Some were just scared. Some were stupid. Some drew because they thought they had to. He looked at his shaking hands. I wanted to be done with that. Wanted to sleep without seeing their faces. Without hearing them beg. Without remembering how young some of them were. Catherine took his hands in hers. Held them gently. You protected me. You saved my life. You have nothing to apologize for. I could have killed them. Should have. Maybe. Brennan won't forget this. Won't forgive. He'll come back with more men. Better men. And then we'll deal with it, Catherine said firmly. Together. But right now, you gave them a chance. You showed mercy when killing would have been easier. When killing would have been simpler. She squeezed his hands. That's not weakness, Marcus. That's the strongest thing a man can do. Choose peace when violence is easy. That's who Thomas was. That's who I want to be. And that's who you are, no matter what you used to be. The door opened. Both of them tensed. But it was only Sheriff Morrison, hand on his gun, looking between Marcus and the shattered mirror and the boot prints leading out the door. Heard there was trouble, Morrison said carefully. His eyes went to the Colts at Marcus's hips. Recognition dawned slowly. Marcus Webb. Silent Marcus. I heard you were dead. I was, Marcus said. Been dead for 20 years. Just came back for a minute. Won't happen again if I can help it. Morrison nodded slowly. Removed his hand from his weapon. Jake Brennan's been causing trouble for months. Extortion. Intimidation. Property damage. Been wanting to arrest him, but never had cause. Never had witnesses willing to testify. He looked at Catherine. If he comes back, If he threatens you again, you send for me. We'll handle it legal. The law still means something in this town. Appreciate that, Sheriff, Marcus said quietly. Morrison tipped his hat and left. The door swung shut. Catherine and Marcus stood alone in the ruined saloon. Broken glass sparkled on the floor like diamonds. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air. Everything had changed in the space of 5 minutes. They'll come back, Catherine said. You know they will. Marcus nodded slowly. I know. And when they do, we'll be ready. But first, he looked at her, and there was something like hope in his eyes. Something fragile and half-broken but real. First, I need to know if you still want a man like me around. Knowing what I am, what I've done, what I might have to do again. Catherine thought about Thomas, about the life they'd built, about the saloon that was more than just business. It was memory, it was legacy, it was everything they'd worked for. And she thought about this old man who'd shown up broken and asking for almost nothing, who'd swept her floors and made her coffee and been there every morning for 18 months, asking nothing, giving everything. I already know what kind of man you are, she said. You're the kind who makes my coffee at 5 in the morning, who sweeps my floors before I wake up, who's been here every day, asking for almost nothing, giving me a reason to open these doors every morning. She smiled through tears. The fact that you used to be dangerous just means you chose to be kind. You chose to be gentle. You chose peace. That's the man I want here, Marcus. That's the man Thomas would have wanted, hey. Marcus's throat worked. He nodded once. Couldn't trust his voice. Come on, Catherine said. Let's clean up this glass. And then you can teach me how to shoot those Colts of yours. Because if Brennan comes back, I want to be ready. We'll face it together. They spent the afternoon sweeping broken glass, boarding up the shattered mirror, getting ready for whatever came next. 2 survivors, 2 fighters, 2 people who'd paid prices they shouldn't have had to pay but were still standing, still breathing, still choosing to live. 3 days later, word came that Jake Brennan had left the county, sold his properties, packed his things, headed east toward Kansas or Missouri or someplace where old cavalry scouts with twin Colts weren't waiting with steady hands and the will to use them. The town held a meeting, passed ordinances against intimidation and extortion. Sheriff Morrison deputized 2 new men, veterans who knew how to handle trouble without backing down. Small steps, tiny steps, but steps toward civilization, toward law that meant something. Catherine stood on the saloon's porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Marcus appeared beside her, moving slower now. The violence had taken something out of him, cost him something he couldn't quite name. You saved this town, Catherine said quietly. Just stopped one bully. There'll be others. But now they know we'll fight. That we're not helpless. She turned to look at him. What will you do now? You could leave. Go somewhere nobody knows your name. Somewhere peaceful. You've earned that. Marcus was quiet for a long time, watching the sun sink below the mountains, watching the light fade from gold to red to purple. I was thinking about staying, he finally said. If you'll have me, maybe keep sweeping your floors, making your coffee, being the hired hand nobody notices. He smiled slightly. It's a good life, Catherine. Quiet, peaceful, everything I spent 20 years looking for. They won't dismiss you anymore, not after what they saw. No, but that's all right. Maybe better this way. Maybe men like Brennan need to know some of us old dogs still have teeth. Keeps them honest. Keeps them thinking twice before pushing good people around. Catherine took his hand. The one that shook when it wasn't holding a gun. The one marked with 60 years of work and violence and survival. You're welcome here as long as you want to stay, Marcus Webb. As hired hand. As friend. As family. As whatever you choose to be. Just Marcus is fine, he said. The other man, silent Marcus, the legend, is done. Retired. This time for good, I hope. They stood together as darkness fell. 2 people who'd survived. Who'd fought when fighting was needed. Who'd chosen peace when peace was possible. Who'd found something neither of them had been looking for but both desperately needed. Purpose. Belonging. Home. 18 months later, Marcus Webb died in his sleep. No pain. No struggle. The doctor said his heart just gave out, Too many years, too many battles, too much strain on an old body that had given everything it had. They buried him beside Thomas Reese in the town cemetery on the hill overlooking the valley. Half the county attended. People spoke of his courage, his sacrifice, his role in ending Jake Brennan's reign of terror, the legend he'd been and tried so hard to leave behind. But Catherine remembered him differently, as the old man who'd made her coffee every morning, who'd swept her floors without complaint, who'd been there when she needed him most and asked for almost nothing in return, who'd shown her that strength wasn't about violence or intimidation. It was about choosing kindness when cruelty was easier, about choosing peace when violence was simple, about choosing to build instead of destroy. She commissioned a marker, simple stone with simple words. Marcus Webb, 1802 to 1873, cavalry scout, deputy marshal, friend. He chose peace. That choice mattered most. The story spread the way all good stories spread. Saloons and stagecoaches, telegraph lines and newspaper columns. It changed as it traveled. Some versions had Marcus killing all 6 men. Others had him speaking prophecy. A few even claimed he'd been an angel in disguise, sent to protect the righteous and punish the wicked. But the people who were there, who'd seen it happen, they remembered the truth. An old man with shaking hands and bent spine, dismissed as charity, as weakness, as nothing worth noticing. Until the moment came when kindness wasn't enough, when mercy had been offered and rejected, when peace required the willingness to fight. They remembered how fast he'd moved, how steady his hands had been, how he'd given chances right up to the last second, how he'd chosen wounding over killing when killing would have been easier, how he'd been the man he wanted to be, not the man he'd been forced to become. And they told their children, who told their children, who tell the story still in towns across the West. Because some stories need telling, some choices need remembering, and some lessons about courage and mercy and the price of peace, those lessons never grow old. What would you have done in Marcus's place? Hidden your past, sought peace, only to have violence drag you back one final time? Would you have shown mercy to men like Brennan, or would you have ended it with finality? There's no easy answer, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, if you felt that moment when Marcus's hands stopped shaking and found their old deadly purpose one last time, hit that like button and subscribe. More tales from the frontier coming every week. Stories of ordinary people forced to become extraordinary. Stories of the West as it really was, hard, bloody, beautiful, and achingly human. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.